Good morning. Today I'm going to be demonstrating two watercolor techniques. One will be a watercolor wash and the other will be a watercolor blockout. And first of all, let me show you some of the materials that we'll be using. I have my watercolor paper. It's actually multi-medium paper. It can be used for a variety of different mediums. I've taped it to a surface here because when watercolor paper gets wet, it tends to buckle. So this masking tape will help keep it flat. I have some brushes and I have my water, a little palette, and this is rubber cement. This is one thing we might use. This is mascoid. This helps block out areas of the paper. Because think about doing watercolor. When you do a wash, you want it to be very smooth and even, especially if you're trying to represent a sky. And that's what I'm going to be doing today, is a landscape with a moon inspired by an image that I saw the other day when I was out walking around sunset. So I'm going to try to capture that. So that means creating a very smooth sky, but with the moon in there, the moon is going to be white. So this technique of blocking out will help me keep the moon white, because it's very hard to lighten watercolor once you've painted over the paper. It's almost impossible. So the first thing I'm going to be doing is doing a light sketch, and very simple sketch, basically separating the sky from the ground. I'll probably just do a horizon where the moon goes, and then I'm just going to play it by ear where the other pieces and parts go. Well, I've done a simple sketch of a scene of a creek, alongside a creek, with a moon in the background or in the sky. And now I'm going to do the blockout part. I'm going to use my rubber cement. So it's very sticky. So I suggest you use an old brush, not one of your good brushes, because sometimes it's a little difficult to clean. And I've got a little bit of soapy water in here. I'm going to dip my brush in there just to get it wet. Less chance of it sticking to the brush. Dry it off a little bit. And the water, I'd like to leave some white areas. If I paint that blue, it's going to be very difficult to show the white. So I'm going to block out some of the areas with masking tape. And whatever your scene is, I'm sure there's going to be some very light areas in it. So we can use masking tape. Of course, it won't be in a straight line unless you're doing an abstract. There's all kinds of ways to use this. But mine is going to be more like reflections on the water. So it'll just be a little bit wavy. There's one little piece. So I'm just going to continue cutting out little strips of this masking tape to show the reflection of the water. I've blocked out some areas that I want to keep white. And I put a line of masking tape across here because I don't want my sky wash to go down to the foreground. So the first thing we do is wet the paper. So for that, oh, and just a reminder, after you've finished painting your block out with the rubber cement, be sure to wash your brushes out well with soap and water, because it does get kind of dry and hard to get out if you don't wash it right away. Okay, so a nice soft brush, white brush. Just brush it across the paper. Let's check. Make sure we didn't miss any spots. So I made a little puddle of blue here, and I'm going to start at the top. See how dark it is, and we can always build up. So the sky, it's typically darker at the top and getting lighter as we go down. So you can just brush all the way across the moon. Keep your brush strokes nice and smooth. So I went a little bit darker at the top. I'm going to add a little more blue in there. I have to move quickly while the paper is still wet. Adding a little more blue, a little more than that. I think I'm going to add a little purple in there too. There's always a little purple in the sky. Thin it out with water. It should go down a little bit. I'll go a little darker. Having it on a slight angle helps it run down a little also. Back into the blue.
Julia Green, the guitarist, with the Monteverdi Orchestra, led by Sir John Elliott Gardner. That was Joaquin Rodrigo's Concerto de Aranjuez. And hope this day would be like the symphony next by Alexander Bonneton. Sustaining members of KMFA provide the station with a reliable source of monthly income. If you're a KMFA sustainer and you've recently received a new credit card or debit card, we need to hear from you.
We're back now to continue. The wash that I did for the sky is mostly dry. So what I'm going to do now is try to remove some of this Elmer's rubber cement. And I'm going to do that with an eraser. You can see it's mostly coming off, but not the blue paint, not the sky color. Okay, we're going to come back and work on the moon a little bit more. Now we're going to work a little bit on the water. I put some masking tape down here to preserve the white areas. So I'm going to paint over that now and put some different shades of blue in the water. I think I'm going to add a little bit of black to the blue, because this was sunset, so it was getting a little bit darker, and the water was pretty dark with just bright reflections. I think closer to us, I'm going to make it a little bit lighter. After we remove the paper, we can go in and add some other darker areas. But remember, with watercolor, we start with light and move towards dark, because it's really difficult to lighten something back up once you have it dark. Oh, and by the way, I forgot to mention that I did use a little of this mascoid. When I tried it earlier, it was a little thick and it was not working very well, but I diluted it with a little water and it's flowing a lot better. So I put a few little lines, you see here, in between the masking tape. So that will give it a little more light areas. Okay, so now we can just let that dry and we'll be back in a little bit. Okay, we're ready to remove the masking and the mascoid. And that will reveal the light areas that we covered. Let's go slow down. So now we have lots of light area in the water. I'm going to go back in with some darker washes, just some thin lines, to give it a little more contrast, a little variety in shades of gray, blue. And that'll make it a little more realistic. So we've got the white and we've got a light gray. So I would like to have about 3 different shades in that water. So now I'm just going to go in and put different lines, which will show a variety of contrast in the water. That's where I damaged the paper. So just representing the ripples in the water. Well, we're finished with the blocking and removing the masking tape and the mascoid. So now I'm going to work on the surrounding areas, the greenery. And again, we start with the light colors and then build up with the dark. So I find a good, natural looking green. And just play around with mixing your colors if you want to tone it down a little bit. And put a little brown in there. That's a pretty good looking green right there. I think I'll use a bigger brush. Right now I'm just getting the undercolor for the green, and we'll go back and add some more detail, the shrubbery and the trees. So a little more. This is a sunset, or at a dusk. And here, the darker colors are in the background, and the lighter colors in the foreground. I'll put a little green on the water because there'll be some reflections of the grass going into the water. I think we'll let that dry a little bit, and we'll come back and do some more detail. Now that my green wash is dry, I can go in and start adding the detail. I'm going to be adding lots of trees and shrubs, and I'm going to do a little something special with that moon later on. But let's just get adding some detail. Since it's dusk, the images in the background are going to be a little darker. So I'm going to add some shrubs back there, and that'll be green. I may have to add a little black to make them really dark green. That was a little blue, but that looks like a pretty good green. Let's see how that goes. They're more like a silhouette. So I'm just dabbing this paint on. So I'm going to continue with bushes along there, and I need to highlight that creek a little bit. Give a little more definition. So I'm just going to be playing around with this. So whatever your image is today, it may not be a landscape, but just continue with this, and I'll see you in the next step. Well, I've been busy painting the detail. As you can see, I put lots of trees and shrubs. I like the rocks a little bit, put a little bird in there. My finishing touch is this moon. I want it to be a crescent moon, just a little sliver of a new moon. So I used this watercolor pencil. As you can see, I just drew the little line right here. Now I'm just going to add a little water to that. You may have some watercolor pencils. They're very, very handy. Just don't want to get water in that lower area because we're going to leave that nice and bright. And maybe add a little warm tone to it. So next time you're out in the evening and you see a new moon coming up, just notice how there's a little crescent there, and you can still see the shape of the whole moon. But it's just a little darker. I need to get it a little bit darker. And add a little purple. Just playing around with the shade of that moon. I'm trying to get it to match the sky. So I'm having to just play around with it a little bit. Well, that concludes my demonstration of watercolor washes and watercolor blockout. You notice how the very extreme whites, that's where we blocked out the certain areas so we could maintain the white area, and the washes behind, a little bit in the foreground. Then I added my detail. So I hope you can find some images that you'd like to paint and use that technique. This is my final product. I have a little bird there and the new crescent moon. So get those paints out and be creative. Have a great day.